In July 2020, many astronomers were able to see a trail shining through the sky below the Big Dipper. It was a comet Neowise, also called under a barbarian name C2020F3, for the third non-periodic comet discovered on the second part of March 2020. Neowise is the name of a telescope that first identified it, and it's much simpler. But tell me, Polly, do you know what a comet is? It's not to be confused with shooting stars and meteorites. A meteorite is an object, usually a rock, that comes from space and reaches the surface of the Earth after passing through the atmosphere. A shooting star is a luminous phenomenon that follows the entry of a meteorite into the atmosphere. As it heats up, it leaves a trail of very hot, ionized and luminous gas called plasma. This phenomenon is extremely fast and lasts at most for a few seconds. It is therefore absolutely necessary to have an atmosphere to observe shooting stars. And in space, as for astronauts aboard the International Space Station, so above the Earth's atmosphere, you have to look below. Let's get back to our comet. Polly? Polly? Ah, there you are. It's quiet here. It's dark. No one will hear you scream. Wait, Polly. I'm picking up something. Look out! So that's a comet? Let's take a look. That small celestial body a few miles ahead of us is the nucleus of a comet. It's made of ice and dust. It's exactly like a very big and dirty snowball. So far, nothing to report. We're in space, far from our star. But let's take a look at the trajectory of a snowball. As it gets closer to the sun, ice and dust from the nucleus are exposed to various forces emanating from the star: stellar wind, radiation pressure, and gravitation. The nucleus is bombarded with particles and radiation. A true solar storm that will sublimate the ice, instantly changing it into gas with dust. Our dirty snowball begins its transformation. Around the core, this cloud of gas and dust is what we call the coma. It has a very large diameter of more than 50,000 kilometers. It's much bigger than the Earth, but right here it remains a tiny dot in the sky. But what makes the comets impressive is the tails they draw in space. The most visible of all is made of dust, driven away by light. The sun emits light in the form of photons, and when these meet the very light comet dust contained within the comet's air, they pushed it further and further away. The comet continues on its path in its orbit and keeps on releasing gas and dust. Step by step, the tail takes on a curved shape in the plane of the orbit in relation to the sun, like a trace in its path. The second tail is often slightly bluish. It's made of plasma. Nothing to do with science fiction, it is a particular state of matter, like the solid, liquid or gaseous phases, but is made of a soup of charged particles, called ions and electrons. This time it's because of the solar wind, which bombards the comet with particles of matter. It's a bit complicated to explain in a few seconds. Let's just say that the sun releases so much energy that it will break the molecules and the atoms of a comet into a soup called plasma and project them into the vacuum of space. This tail therefore behaves exactly like a shadow and is always at the opposite of the sun. Thanks to radioastronomy and powerful instruments, we can detect hydrogen tails or antitails, but they are not visible. Remember, at the beginning we said that the comet was non-periodic. Like many other celestial bodies, the comet revolves around the sun. It orbits our star. This trajectory is not perfectly round, it's an elliptical orbit, an oval-shaped trajectory whose period, the time it takes to complete the whole orbit, can take from a few years to several thousand. Halley's famous comet, for example, comes back to see us every 76 years, and that's where it gets interesting. The comet's tail only appears when it's close to the Sun, and at that time our dirty snowball becomes like a real rocket engine. With its passage close to the Sun, Comet Neowise changed its orbital period from 4,500 years to 6,800 years. It will be long before we see it again. Well, I hope you like this little space trip with Polly, and we're not going to wait that long to come back. We'll talk again on that subject. There is still a lot to be said about comets, and this will be the opportunity to talk about an extraordinary mission, that of a European probe, Rosetta.